All right. So the ESPN piece on how Alabama went from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer in 2 days. It's interesting. I don't know. I always like to hear the kind of the behind the scenes of how it all went down because we did a lot of speculating on how it all went down.
And by the way, a lot of that speculation turned out to be true. I mean, a lot of these reports were leaked, and now this is all just kind of put into one little neat little story.
But it's also from only one guy's perspective.
Yeah.
Greg Byrne, the AD at Alabama. So this is his tale. I think the thing that's left out of here is they don't talk much about Jimmy Sexton's influence because all of the guys mentioned was what we talked about when it happened. Yeah. All of the guys mentioned in this story, coaches, are all Jimmy Sexton clients, every one of them.
And this is why the part of the story that I don't believe is the Kalen DeBoer doing the I had no idea. Kalen DeBoer acts as if he lost the national title game, came back to Washington, and then it stunned him. And he first heard about the job on Wednesday, and then he accepted it on Friday. First off, you're lying. Washington offered you a $9 million a year contract, and you turned it down. Why did you turn down that deal? Because your agent was telling you, hey, by the way, keep your options open. Something may be happening. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And don't let him fool you for 1 second that he was, because he said immediately when he heard about the Alabama job, he wanted the job before he ever talked to anyone. AKA Jimmy Sexton was like, this is your job if you want it. So, I mean, there are some...
Well, can both things be true there, though? Both things can be true in the sense that the first thing is he definitely... Sexton knew that Saban could be leaving.
Yes.
Now, what we learned in here is that Saban told Greg Byrne at the end of the 2022 season that he didn't know when he'd retire, but he didn't know how long he was going to do this.
He said, all this stuff is weighing on me. We got to start treating this year to year.
So I'm guessing over the course of the season, somewhere in there, Greg Byrne is getting with Jimmy Sexton saying, hey, I'm going to put this on your radar. Don't know when it's going to happen, but we have a lot of interest in Kalen DeBoer. Because what ended up happening, at least in this story, Byrne said that his top two choices were Kalen DeBoer and Mike Norvell. Yeah. Dan Lanning was not. As a matter of fact, they said, and again, this is where it comes back to Jimmy Sexton. Jimmy Sexton represents Dan Lanning as well. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Jimmy Sexton is smart, probably called Oregon and said, hey, watch out. Alabama job's open. What are you going to do for my guy? And then Lanning puts out a video. Boom. But they said by the time Lanning released that video that he was staying, Byrne had already zeroed in on DeBoer and Norvell.
And they said that they knew Sark wasn't, I think in the piece he said knew Sark wasn't even an option, that Sark wasn't going to leave Texas, period.
Right. So he was out. But he also put out a thing like staying at Texas, you know, so. But I think surely Sexton knew that it's possible that Saban could retire, and I'm guessing Sexton knew that DeBoer was on Alabama's radar, which is why DeBoer did not sign an extension. Okay, so that's one thing that's true. But also it could be true that DeBoer, you know, he's coaching for the national championship. It could be true because no one seemed to know that Saban was actually going to retire this season.
Yes.
DeBoer said the Bama job wasn't even on his radar. He said he woke up Wednesday morning. So Saban retired on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. DeBoer said he woke up Wednesday morning trying to get over the loss, business as usual. We've got stuff to do here at UW. Then he said Bama calls him Wednesday. He meets with them Thursday, and he's offered the job on Friday, and he knew he wanted it because it's Alabama.
Yeah.
So that's how he said it went down. It's possible that that's true, even though Sexton advised him maybe before to keep his options open. I think both things could be true there.
Sure. I just think that you're being disingenuous if you don't, by saying that it was not on your radar. I don't believe that to be true. Every one of those coaches, from Dan Lanning to Steve Sarkisian to Mike Norvell to Lane Kiffin, isn't it great, by the way, that not a single man whose name was mentioned for that job isn't represented by Jimmy Sexton?
Well, that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
they're all Jimmy Sexton.
It's crazy.
Guys.
Even the ones that weren't really considered for it are still Jimmy Sexton guys. But it sounds like, according to Byrne, that Mike Norvell was their guy.
Yeah.
They wanted Mike Norvell, and Mike Norvell and Jimmy used that to get Mike Norvell $10 million a year for 8 more years at Florida State, a bump up in pay for all his assistants, and a guarantee that they were going to spend money on the football program. So It's just I just love it that all these guys use these things, and by all these guys, I mean the agent use them to drum up.
Well, yeah,
To drum up extra money and resources for his clients.
That's how it works. I mean, Jimmy Sexton is a power broker in college football. And by the way, do we need to talk about Norvell saying no to Alabama to stay at Florida State?
A little crazy, huh?
That's wild.
Although $80 million will,
Well, he would have gotten more than that at Alabama.
Probably would have got, I mean, I don't know if he gets more, but he probably gets obviously the same. But
And Florida State's leaving the 8. I don't know. That's a weird one.
Yeah.
That's a weird one. But he said he talked in there about fit.
Yep.
And he didn't think he was the right fit for that job.
Well, and it's true that one, following Saban, I guess that was the DeBoer thing. He said the first question that was asked of him was, what do you feel about following the legend? And he said, I'm the only one that'll tell you I'm going to embrace it. And, and I think that goes for Sark. I think it goes for Kim. It goes for a lot of those people. And we talked about it at the time. Do you really want to be the one filling in after Nick? Think about the level of expectation at Alabama. You could win 10 games every single year. Hell, you could win 11 games every single year. And it's not going to be good enough unless you win national championships. I honestly, I don't want that job. And I'll go to my grave saying this too. Alabama is not the job that we all make it out to be. Alabama is a job like so many other schools that if you get the right guy there, you have all the resources to win. But Alabama was not a great job after Bear Bryant left. Gene Stallings made it a great job. It wasn't a good job after Gene Stallings left. For God's sakes, they hired Mike Price at one point. And who else they got? They got Mike Shula. They got DeBoer. Like Alabama was, it's not like anyone that goes to Alabama just is guaranteed to win. Saban made it that. You remove Saban from that equation, and I ask you, is Alabama any better than Florida
Yes.
or any of those other schools?
You say Florida. I thought you were going to say Florida State. And I would say you take Nick Saban out of there. Yes, I think Alabama is a better job than Florida State, even with everything that you just said.
Yeah, because Florida State hasn't dumped the resources in.
See, the thing about Norvell, Florida State is, I just don't think it's that great of a job. Florida State,
Without a conference, I agree.
It's not.
Not without, but I mean, with where they are currently, yes.
What's his name? Jimbo.
Yeah.
Jimbo bailed on Florida State. All the stuff that Jimbo said, and he won a championship at Florida State.
Yep.
All the stuff that he said about why he left there is all still true at Florida State.
Yep.
And he flamed them. And he went to Texas A&M, which is not, that's not.
No,
that's just a tough.
Yeah.
Well, he's gone now.
Yeah.
So he's already flamed out at Texas A&M, but he left Florida State to go to Texas A&M, much less Alabama. So what I'm saying is, I think it is crazy that Norvell turned down Alabama for Florida State. Now, if Kalen DeBoer stays at Washington, I think that's a little bit more stable because they're now in the Big Ten. Florida State is kind of in limbo here in the ACC.
I got to believe that when Norvell agreed to that, $80 million, all the incentives that he got for his coaches and his budget, my guess is that they told Mike, hey, in a year, we're out of here. We'll be in the Big Ten too. Florida State is not long for the ACC. And he got some assurances, or at least he thinks he got some assurances that Florida State's ready to commit. Yeah, because that's always been the rub for Florida State, is that they don't commit the way other schools commit. And Alabama certainly will commit. Don't get me wrong. I just think that we make Alabama out to be a job that is like no other. And the only reason it's a job like no other is because Nick Saban was there. And how many times did we hear in the last handful of months that it's shocking the Saban discount that their players gave because they wanted to go play. And the moment he was gone, that discount doesn't apply anymore.
Well, I agree with all that, but I still think it's wild to stay at FSU, especially after what had happened to them in the college football playoff.
Yep.
Like they were getting, I don't know, man, they got hosed.
It is kind of crazy that he did stay there. Yes.
So Byrne,
can you imagine if you got turned down, if Byrne got turned down by Mike Norvell and the Washington head coach, like in then
where does he go?
Probably Lane Kiffin.
Sark, no. Well, you know what's interesting is in there they said Lane Kiffin came up twice, and he said Lane Kiffin and Sark were not. They really weren't on their radar.
Nope.
He knew Sark wouldn't leave Texas. He didn't explain why Kiffin.
Yeah.
But they did say Lane Kiffin. So Florida State was scared that Norvell was gone.
Yeah.
And Florida State was moving to hire
Lane Kiffin. Let you know that old
Go
Jimmy
out.
thought that Mike might be gone.
Exactly.
So he's telling, Jimmy's working and being like, hey, you go get my guy Mike. And then he's telling Lane, hey, Lane, you're next up for Florida State.
And see, I think it would be interesting to see if Lane would have gone there, because
He
he's in the SEC. Ole Miss, does he leave there for Florida State?
He leaves there for Florida State.
Greg Byrne said he called 4 people to get their thoughts before he got on the horn with his candidates. Do you know what 4 people he called?
I do, because
Because you read the story.
I read the story.
Does Buck know?
Ooh, I'm trying to guess if there would be.
It's
Well,
former players,
okay.
just FYI.
Well, that.
Well, I mean,
Well, no, I mean, I was
you
going to
gotta
go players
narrow
or
it down.
admin.
You got to narrow it down a little bit.
Do I?
Call him the ghost of Elvis, for God's sakes. They
He's
call
not
him-
on
I'm
there.
trying to think of which former players.
Okay. You're never going to get it. He called Joe Namath, Mark Ingram,
I'm sorry. Why would you care what Joe Namath thinks about this?
Jalen Hurts, and Devontae Smith.
Yeah, the Slim Reaper.
A very weird foursome to call.
I
I
thought
don't
it
get
was-
why you would need drunk Joe Namath's opinion. I just don't get
That's
that.
why you're not the
Well,
AD.
he's sober now.
That's
Is
why
he?
you're. Well, so he claims. So is Scott Weiland.
Boy, man, that's rough. I think he is sober. Last time I saw him, he seemed very coherent. Had lost some weight. He didn't have the big bulbous red drunk nose. God.
So no Derrick Henry, huh?
No.
No, just those.
Devontae
Ingram
Smith.
over Henry.
He said he wanted to get a feel for what the players thought.
So he just kind of okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a good phone call to make. I don't know. Kind of weird.
Yeah, the Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts even left. He went to Oklahoma. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Jalen Hurts said, "Go get Lincoln Riley."
Ooh.
No, he didn't. I'm just kidding.
I don't think Lincoln's leaving L.A.
All right, that story in ESPN worth a read. Pretty interesting. At least I thought. I don't know. Maybe you didn't think so.
I did.